Chapter 16. The day toiled into night, and the skies had grown dark early. They hadn't encountered another soul. Although they knew that was a good thing, it still left them feeling even more lost. The shadows rose as the sun faded. The surrounding trees shook in the wind and thunder. It hadn't stormed on them yet, but the angry sky hadn't let go of its grudge either. Dare, Kelin, and Thalin hunched together in the exposed roots of a massive tree. Kelin's dark cloak stretched out above them. The sounds of the forest sliced through the wall of silence between them. Dare stared out ahead. It was about all she could do. Her hands were as heavy as rocks, and the pain was returning. Healing salves were said to fix bones and mortal wounds, so what was so wrong with her that she couldn't be saved? Beside her, Thalin's whole body shuddered.
She never hurt anyone!
He beat a fist against Kelin's thigh and sobbed.
She never did bad things! Why did she have to be killed?
Kelin banged his head against a large root.
I know. She was kind to us. It was just bad luck.
He put a hand on the boy's shoulder. Thalin howled louder and thrashed in place.
She didn't do nothing wrong! She was kind to everybody!
He tried to dry his eyes with his fists.
She was the nicest person in the whole world! There was this one time when this man tried to rob us and Dad was gonna kill him, but she wouldn't let him. She made the man dinner and he became our friend.
He sniffed.
Why? She wasn't a fighter or anything. She didn't do anything wrong. She was the most kindest person.
We know, Kelin soothed. None of this is fair, Dare whispered. She looked down at her hands. It should have been me. Kelin shook his head at her. Thalin struggled against Kelin's arm.
The bow should have broken. The arrow should have missed. She didn't do nothing wrong.
We know,
Kelin squirmed.
She helped us when we had nothing to give in return. She was the most generous person we've ever met.
The boy wailed against his chest while the wind rose to a scream around them. Dare glanced above the cloak, watching the flashes of lightning. I wish it would either storm or pass. Kelin nodded, trying not to disturb the crying boy. Thalin cried until slumber took him away. After a while, Kelin lifted him and pushed him into Dare's lap. Your turn. She pushed the boy back at him and pressed against the trunk of the tree. My first reaction with a baby was to put my hand under its nose so it could smell me. Good thing he's not an infant. But I have no idea what to do with him. Her expression softened. The most rearing I've done is I helped old Ergo raise his sheepdogs since they were puppies. Kelin let Thalin fall into her arms anyway. Then he smiled.
You really did that, didn't you? With a baby?
She nodded. When Mother dragged me to see a Shine's new one. She spared a thought to reflect that she had already grown used to his slow, warped speech. Kelin chuckled and then dropped his gaze down to Thalin.
I feel for him. He's half Kelin. Nobody's going to want anything to do with him.
He didn't choose it.
No, but think about it, Kelin ordered. If he were older, would you want to be around him?
No one would know. We didn't even believe in the storm readers.
No, but everyone will now.
She sighed. We promised to find his father. I don't know how, but we need to. He gave her a long, practiced glare.
Do you want to go back to that place?
Want? No. But she gazed out at the clearing. The winds howled, the thunder cracked, but it wasn't raining. The sky couldn't decide what to do either. Dare shivered and drew her arms around herself while she wheezed for breath. My hands are already slowing. I don't know how long they'll answer me. She looked at him and saw how fear had hollowed out his eyes.
Please don't die, he whispered. You can't. We won't survive if you...
She turned her face away. Let's try to sleep. Maybe things will be better in the morning. Above the cloak, the thunder rumbled on. Dare jerked awake to someone's fist jabbing her shoulder.
What? Riders!
Fallon hissed. She blinked and tried to push herself backward into the tree. What? It was daylight again, but the sunlight wasn't pushing through the tree's lower branches much. Kelin was pulling the cloak down from the exposed roots.
Lucky they came that way. Hide already.
He yanked it down and squeezed up beside them. There was nothing to do but wait. They each held their breath. The hoofbeats grew louder, knocking loose the damp leaves above their heads. Then they stopped. They heard the stamping of hooves, but no voices. Dare rolled her head to the side to try to catch a glimpse through the roots. They're not riders, she whispered as she pushed herself to her feet, still hugging the tree. The other two crawled up beside her. 3 white unicorns looked up from their play. Their coats were so brilliant, Dare had to squint to see them. Their golden and silver horns made the cloudy light dance around them like a bright noon. She forgot about her pain at the sight. Kelin frowned.
And a black horse. A really, really enormous black horse.
Fallon gulped and shook his head. His orange eyes were wide.
Doesn't look like a horse.
Dare blinked, and, sure enough, there was a massive, midnight black horse standing behind the unicorns. It was hard to focus on both at once. The horse was everything the unicorns weren't. It was huge. It was muscular. Its hooves were larger than her face, and suddenly she couldn't get that measurement out of her mind because that horse flattened its ears and stamped the ground. The unicorns cantered off into the forest, moving as fluidly as a mountain stream. But the black horse stayed and glared. Dare slipped her hand toward her stolen sword where it was propped up against the roots. Fallon, start climbing the tree. Kelin shook his head.
Do you see how big that thing is? It'd knock the tree down.
The horse snorted and flipped its mane. The ears lifted. It looked after where the unicorns had gone and then back at them. It stuck up its nose and raised its tail. Then, as daintily as an equine can, it tiptoed into the forest by the direction it and the unicorns had arrived. Dare let her fingers relax on the pommel. Well, that may have been one of the strangest things I've ever seen. Kelin grumbled, rolling up his cloak.
We should go.
He kicked a root.
Like the gods were not burdened down with supplies like food.
We'll find berries. Remember, red ones are only poisonous half the time. Black and blue ones are usually all right.
Then you're eating them first, Dare.
There might be some wild onions. I mean, there are at home. She picked up the blade while hiding a grimace, then forced a tight grin. Fallon, do you have any idea where your father is? The boy held up his empty hands. She opened her mouth, but instead of a reply, she threw up whatever was left in her stomach. Then she lost her grip on the sword and collapsed onto her knees, hacking and retching. She grabbed her chest as pain surged through her body.
There's blood in this, Dare. You're vomiting blood.
Kelin paled as he pointed. She tried to push herself up and stumbled forward.
I'm all right. No, you're not.
He threw his cloak on the ground.
You're dying. We don't know where we are. We don't know where we're going, and we're being hunted by cultists in Kelin.
Finally, After a day and a night of rumbling skies, it started to pour. Kelin stuck his hand out in the curtain of water and laughed.
Oh, and now it's raining!
Dare rested her head against the tree. Our best idea is to find and remain at our camp. I think the boy's father could find us there.
Who couldn't?
Kelin snapped. He sighed.
I won't say you're right, but that's probably our best chance.
Riders! Fallon squeaked.
Are the unicorns coming back?
Kelin asked, stepping away from the tree. No, the boy pointed. It's the black horse with... shit. The massive horse led the way, but this time he carried a bareback rider in red who held a lance. Other horses with riders followed closely. Their armor didn't shine, but instead mirrored the colors of the forest. But their drawn swords, those shone, even through the rain. The riders fanned out around them. Each one had a helmet with a lowered visor, so they could see none of their faces. Fallon ducked behind Kelin and clutched his belt. The black horse stepped in front of them and twitched its ears. The rider's size was to a man what the horse was to other horses. He couldn't have ridden a normal horse. He wore blood-red plate armor and was carrying a great sword and a battle-axe on his saddle, and a massive shield on his back. He lowered the lance at them. The rain ran off its sharpened point. At least it was just rain, Dare told herself, instead of something much more precious. The Red Rider cleared his throat.
We've seen many people out here who don't belong. Kemen, cultists, and now you. So I'm only going to ask once for surrender.
Dare forced her chin up. Beside her, she saw Kelin and Fallon looking at her. She winced at how bright the boy's eyes were. She said, this might take a while to explain. Then she started swaying and groaned. She leaned forward. Oh no. With a tremendous heave, she vomited right on the black horse's massive hooves.